It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and today we're taking a look at the three films of October 14th, 2005. And on today's show, we have a remake of a John Carpenter classic. We also have a couple of underrated films from director Cameron Crowe, starring Orlando Bloom and Kirsten Dunst, and Tony Scott directing a film with Keira Knightley and Mickey Rourke among the cast. But before we get to those movies, let's take a look at the biggest new release of the weekend, which is, sadly, The Fog. Congratulations, Sony. You took a classic horror movie and you completely just botched it up and made it into another generic 2000s horror movie. But then again, should we expect anything less from the same director that gave us such great movies as Stigmata and Blank Check? I think we all know the answer to that question. But in this movie, they tell us the story of a strange fog that sweeps in over an island town off the coast of Oregon, bringing with it the vengeful spirits of mariners who were murdered there 134 years before. The townspeople find themselves trapped and fighting for their lives while discovering the truth of their dark history. And, yeah. That trailer, I think, is a perfect sum of everything that's wrong with this movie. From the fact that everything gets so set up for the same predictable tropes that we've seen in so many bad horror movies, you know. The car all of a sudden just stops in the middle of nowhere, and then all of a sudden the evil fog comes, and it just so happens that a truck is there, and the car is able to just go careening into the water, killing off Selma Blair, and it's just like, what comedic timing that is. I'm sorry, what horrifying timing that is. And, of course, you gotta have your ass shot in here, you gotta have your woman in the skimpy clothing thinking that, you know, there's going to be a possibility of nipple in here, but then again, this is PG-13, so if you really think that at that point, you're really fucking stupid. But, this movie really does think you're fucking stupid. I mean, the whole movie thinks you're fucking stupid. I mean, this is without a doubt one of the stupidest movies I have ever seen in my entire life. This is a terrible, terrible remake of this classic film. John Carpenter took an idea that was stupid and made it terrifying. It actually worked to John Carpenter's strengths. This movie, however, takes everything that made the original Fog such the classic that it was, and essentially just turned it into, like I said, another generic-ass horror film in the 2000s. I mean, there is nothing about this movie that's scary. There's nothing about this movie that's intimidating. There's nothing about this movie that's interesting whatsoever. It's a mess. It's a mess of a film on so many levels. Just not worth it in the long run. And, of course, because people are idiots, they went to make this the big hit of the weekend. And I guarantee you that as soon as they saw it, they immediately forgot about it almost afterward. I mean, who would remember this movie, except for the fact that it was a terrible remake of a classic John Carpenter movie? At least with Assault on Precinct 13 that came out early in the year, they were at least trying to modernize it for a new generation without dumbing it down for audiences, and it almost works. It's a fine movie for what it is, but you know, this is a bad movie. This is a bad horror movie. Even if it wasn't a remake of a classic film, it would have been a bad movie anyway. I guarantee you, if you saw this back then on the opening weekend, you probably have no idea what even happens in this movie. You probably don't even remember it. In fact, you probably don't even know that this movie even existed until I brought it up here. I mean, that's just my thinking on this movie's part, because, yeah, this movie does think you're really that stupid to remember this film in general. But, yeah, terrible movie. Yeah, avoid it like the plague. So, we got the bad movie out of the way. Now let's actually get to the good stuff. Let's go ahead and take a look at some underrated films that came out this weekend, starting with Cameron Crowe's Elizabethtown. Okay, that is a horrible commercial for this movie. I never even saw that commercial until I actually recorded that for this episode. But my God, that's a terrible commercial. Because first of all, if he was losing $1 million, he wouldn't have gotten fired. No, in the movie, he loses $972 million, and that's why he gets fired. And, yeah, those moments where, you know, it's just like, it just feels like a really bad romantic comedy, and it's not that at all. In fact, far from it. It's actually a much more darker and more, it's more of a dramedy in a way, shape, or form, and that's what I really like about this movie. You have a young shoe designer, played by Orlando Bloom, who is fired from his job after costing his company an industry record of nearly $1 billion, $972 million. On the verge of suicide, Drew receives a call from his sister telling her that their father has died. while visiting their former hometown of Elizabethtown, Kentucky. Deciding to postpone his suicide and bring the father's body back to Oregon, he then becomes involved with an unexpected romance with a flight attendant played by Kirsten Dunst, whom he meets near the start of his journey. And you also see Susan Sarandon in this film, Alec Baldwin, Bruce McGill, Jessica Biel, Judy Greer. Really good cast overall. And who else was in here? Paul Schneider is in here, Loudon Wainwright. Just a lot of really, really good talent in this movie. This is a really good movie that I really think does not get the proper respect it deserves. It's a really solid film, and it's a criminally underrated film for Cameron Crowe in general, who made a lot of really good movies in general. But this is a film that just works to the strengths of what Cameron Crowe does so well here. I mean, Kirsten Dunst and Orlando Bloom, they have this great chemistry together. You do buy into the relationship that they have, and you do like the journey that Orlando Bloom goes on. It does not pull punches when it needs to. I mean, it's a really, really good film overall. Maybe not as good as Cameron Crowe's Almost Famous, which I think that and Vanilla Sky, I think, are his overall magnum opuses. Even Jerry Maguire, I think, is a good movie in general, but this was a really good film that sadly does not get the proper respect it deserves. It's a really good film, very underrated film. I highly recommend checking it out. It's definitely, if you like stuff like Jerry Maguire, Say Anything, Almost Famous, Vanilla Sky, this is definitely right up there with some of Cameron Crowe's best work. Definitely a very underrated film. Definitely check it out. So with all that said, let's go ahead and move on to the last one we have here. Yet another underrated film that came out this weekend, Tony Scott's Domino. So not only does Will Turner have a movie out this weekend, so does Elizabeth Swann from the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. All that's missing is a film from Johnny Depp, but then again, Corpse Bride was still playing in theaters, so there you go. There's one with Jack Sparrow. So we've completed the trifecta there. But this is Domino, which is inspired by the story of Domino Harvey, who's the English daughter of stage and screen actor Lawrence Harvey, who became a Los Angeles bounty hunter and actually died from an overdose at the age of 35 of fentanyl on June 27th of this year, about a few months before the film was released. Its plot flashes back to when Domino, played by Keira Knightley, is a fashion model turned bounty hunter, narrating how a $10 million robbery came about 36 hours beforehand. Mickey Rourke, Edgar Ramirez, Delroy Lindo, Mina Suvari, Monique, Lucy Liu, and Christopher Walken are among the cast in the film. Very underrated film in general, and plays to the strengths of what Tony Scott does that's so different from his brother Ridley Scott. And it was a film that did not get the best reviews when it came out. In fact, they got thrashed by critics when it came out. It was not a big box office hit either, but has gone on to have this following over the years, and rightfully so, because it is a really solid film, a very stylistic, cool-looking film that definitely is very visually interesting to look at with its dark twists and turns. And Keira Knightley shows she can hold her own in a movie like this. She fits the role of Domino so well, and it's just a really, really entertaining film all the way through. It's a very intense film. It's a film that does go to so many different lengths and goes to so many different aspects that you wouldn't expect from a film like this. And it does keep you invested in what's going on in general. It has a great script written by Richard Kelly, who gave us Donnie Darko. Just the pieces coming together so well here. And it's a film that really is a lot better than I think a lot of people let on. I'm glad to see that it's getting somewhat of a cult following, but because it is actually a really good film. It shows what Keira Knightley can do as a leading actress in a big role like this. And it just works all the way through. It has a lot of style to it, a lot of good action sequences, a lot of good storytelling. Very underrated Tony Scott film. One I highly recommend checking out. Definitely check out Domino. So with all that said, we wrap up another edition of Time About the Movies. Next time we meet, a lot of movies to look at next time around, including The Rock starring in the video game adaptation of Doom, Kurt Russell and Dakota Fanning in Dreamer. We also have Charlize Theron in North Country, Ewan McGregor, Ryan Gosling, and Naomi Watts in Stay. We also have Kids in America, which is a movie that some of you may not be too familiar with, but you'll know some of the names in this film. Criminally underrated Steve Martin movie, Shop Girl. One of my favorite movies of all time, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. We also have, I think the last one here is Barely Legal. So what do we got here? Let me just make sure there's nothing else here on this list. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 movies to look at next time. So we have a stacked show again. We are in awards season. We are at a point where, you know, I'm starting to remember a lot of these movies. Some of them you might not be too familiar with, but you might recognize some of the names involved in here. So we have a lot of movies to get to, of course, and we'll delve into those on the next episode. But until then, Thank you so much for watching, and if you want to see more videos like this, please hit the playlist on the next page, check out the previous episode, and also don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button if you want to see more videos on this channel. Also hit the notification button too to get updated when new videos come out. And speaking of stacked shows, stay tuned for Time About the Movies Flashback, because we're flashing back to the weekend before Thanksgiving, 1987, with a ton of notable films, the re-release of Cinderella, Flowers in the Attic, Nuts, Teen Wolf 2, Sign of the Times, Date with an Angel, and The Last Emperor. So we got 7 movies to look at on there. We'll look at all those on Time About the Movies Flashback, which will be coming up after I post this up, so stick around. We will be right back.